Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Abuja. Tonight, I'll take you deep into the murky waters of politics, especially that intertwining nature between politics, the judiciary, and elections. It's going to be a messy one going forward, because when politicians are threatening brimstone and fire, you know that something is up, especially in a very politically volatile state as Kano, where local government election is going. Government says it will go ahead. Kasich said it is ready. One court order says don't do it. Another court order says go ahead. APC is saying that is going to be anarchy. Well, for Kano State, that I know, just like Rivers State and any other politically volatile state, one needs to keep an eye on it, and the political gladiators need to be very careful because of the messaging. But tonight also, I will let you in on what exactly is going on in the relationship between the Bretton Woods institutions, especially IMF. There are those who say, go and collect loans from the IMF. It will help you with your FX and your monetary policies and help fix some of the problem we're experiencing in the Nigerian economy. But IMF has come out today to say that it's denied being behind the removal of fuel subsidy in Nigeria, saying it was a decision taken by the Tinubu's government. The IMF also says that Nigeria has not made any funding request. This was, according to Mr. Selassie, the director of the African department at the IMF, who spoke today during a press briefing in Washington, D.C. Mr. Selassie was responding to questions on speculations within Nigeria's business cycle that the government is considering going to the fund, the IMF, for financing. And the IMF, the man said, Selassie says, and I quote, the decision was a domestic one. We don't have programs in Nigeria. Our role is limited to regular dialogue, as we have with other nations like Japan or the UK. No, there has not been a request for funding from the IMF in Nigeria. So just be very clear, this is also a question that has come up in the context of some other countries. If and when countries turn to us, I hope that they do so having a very clear plan of how they want all kinds of economic reforms they want to pursue, and turning to us will be a way to help reduce the funding costs that they face. Well, those are the words of Mr. Selassie, which I will allow you to get a sense. If we go to IMF, will it help us? Look at what the dollar is saying to the naira and how things are going in the country, the commodities, and how high the prices are. Are you able to even buy fuel in your vehicle? What is the state of the economy in your pocket, the food on your table, the quality of your life in the last 1 year? Is the IMF or their policy or their help, their debt to them, will it help in any way? What they are saying today, what does this mean for the economic policy of the Bola Tinubu government? I will take you deep into some of these issues tonight. Kano State, the Nigerian economy, and the IMF is staring us in the face. Let's get to discuss some of the issues that we have for you. The IMF, the Tinubu government policies, and what this means altogether for Nigeria. I'm being joined tonight by an economist and chief economist at the SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaji, who joins us virtually from Ibadan, the Oyo State capital. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Alaji, for joining us tonight. Now, some people have warned, be careful of the Bretton Woods institution, IMF, World Bank. Their policies are impoverishing the Nigerian people. Well, they have said, well, we are talking to Nigeria, but hold your government accountable to their policies, especially the removal of fuel subsidy. When you hear that kind of messaging from the IMF as a response to question in respect of the policies that a lot of people thought that the IMF or the World Bank are behind, what do you think exactly is going on, Mr. Alaji?
Well, first of all, I think IMF now realize that the policy that has been made in Nigeria, it may take a very long time if it will ever lead to development or growth at all. You recall that on the 29th of May, the president had announced that subsidy is gone. It appeared as though, as of that time, there was no plan as to what government will do to reduce the impact of poverty, hunger, and deprivation on the people. But what we have seen was that I think around the second week of June, the central bank also announced the flotation of Naira. And since that happened, in a regime where subsidy is gone, even though one has concerns whether subsidy was gone completely up until recently or not, you know that it's like throwing double blow on someone's face. IMF now, I've seen, in fact, I must confess to you that World Bank issued a report. The World Bank report that was issued in 2023 was that if Nigeria don't have a safe landing for the vulnerable and the poor, we would add approximately 5.1 million people to poverty bracket. And the World Bank mentioned that 10 million people have now been added to poverty bracket. So you have 10 million people added to poverty bracket. And IMF, that we heard, I remember I had this conversation with you when IMF mentioned that they were going to, they advised Nigerian government to remove subsidy on electricity. And when subsidy on electricity was removed, Nigeria resolved to having band A's, and you could see the aftermath effect on cost line and pricing. So for me, IMF is saying we are not going to take responsibility. Your government have not approached us for what's it called now? Government is yet to approach them on loans, but if government comes, they will certainly look at it on the merit of it. My advice is that you recall that this year alone, we have spent 6 trillion naira to service debt. Why did we remove subsidy? One of the arguments the last administration had was that subsidy was no longer sustainable. Why? They mentioned that we have spent 3.3 trillion. If by the end of the year 2023, we continue subsidy, we would have spent over 6 trillion naira on subsidy. This year alone, half a year, we have spent 6 trillion naira to service debt. And IMF, the same IMF, in the same report, mentioned that most part of Nigerian revenue is now spent to service debt. Now, if we think that a fire is burning a house, do we say that we should put more fuel in order to put out the fire? That would be absolute insanity. My question here, or my concern here, is that we need to do something very quickly, very urgently, other than looking at foreign loans, especially foreign loans. I remember in 2022, 2023, I did a research that revealed that 89% negative impact is what foreign loan causes for Nigeria in the last 5 years. 89% negative impact. So when IMF says that they will borrow, we have some American government saying we're going to go and borrow money, and when we borrow this money, we will use it to shore up the foreign reserve. The question is, when it finishes, what else are we going to do? Remember that the former administration printed approximately $50 billion in Naira. It was printed. And people wonder, why is inflation had remained with us for long? In fact, IMF recent report projected that Nigerian inflation will remain 32.5% by the end of 2024, and that Nigerian growth will moderate, will reduce slightly to about 2.9% from current above 3%. So here is the point. I am of the opinion that considering the position with IMF is what we need to rethink very quickly. Right. It does not mean that all IMF policies are wrong. Right. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But I'm saying with the nature of our economy, we need to think very carefully again before we adopt any classical approach or classical theory or classical model, which you know is what drives IMF and World Bank together.
Quickly, let's get it straight and let's let the cat bare. So, I mean, there are those who will say, is it true that the Tinubu government is listening to IMF or the World Bank? Is it a crime to listen to them, take their policy advisory and implementing them? There are those who ask that question. When people have criticized the government of the day of listening and implementing the policies of the IMF or the Bretton Woods institution. But the question here is, in the post-financing assessment report of the IMF, he said it clearly, categorically, that the government of Nigeria should immediately remove subsidy on fuel and electricity, that it is overburdening itself. Now, and you will hear World Bank, who says a few days ago, there must be consistency in some of the policy. that the government is pursuing so that they can be able to get adequate result. Now, these policies are saying remove the burden on government, then put it on the people. That is what it looks like to me. Now, tell us, Mr. Alaje, on point blank, the Tinubu government has been listening and implementing the IMF policies, true or false? Do we now regret implementing those policies because it has backfired? Is that the position of things as it is today?
Clearly, I must tell you that we have been adopting IMF World Bank advisory over the years, and this will not be the first time we are adopting those policies. And you see that IMF and World Bank from time to time, when we have major events like meeting with National Bureau of Statistics, or even when they want to unveil some of their reports, they mention that they have met with Nigerian authority, and most recently, World Bank representative said they approve of the policy Nigerian government is following as advice, and that they will want to advise Nigerian government not to backtrack on some of those policies. Why? Because in their words, it will be disastrous. I differ completely. I remember in 2016, the IMF chair head that came to Nigeria, Christine Lagarde, told President Buhari that Nigerian economy is resilient, is strong, and will not go into a recession. I was in popular media station, including, I'm not sure whether channels was involved at the time or not, but some popular media station, and I said, Nigerian economy will certainly go into a recession. How did I know? I knew because of research. I knew because of what has happened before. Nigerian economy will go into a recession when global oil prices go below certain level. Christine Lagarde, the IMF chief, could not control that price. Neither could Nigerian president, as it then was, President Buhari, control the price, or myself. Because when we make gains as a nation, we do not plan on infrastructure. We do not plan on things that drive development. And let me say my concern generally about IMF or World Bank. I am not saying they are not good institutions. No, they are great institutions. But when it comes to the issue of Africa, especially Nigeria, here is my concern. One, I have not seen direct policy that will take Nigeria from import dependence to export oriented. I have not seen that. I have not seen a policy and advice that will liberate Nigeria from an economy that is debt-driven. And I'm not saying it is wrong to borrow. I'm saying that what are we doing with the borrowings? If we are spending 6 trillion alone to service debt half a year.
So, Mr. Alaje,
what you want to...
Yeah. So the big question here is that how the Tinubu government have its fingers burnt in implementing these policies? Because
the truth is that for some of the policies, let me give you one straight.
Especially those who will say the subsidies. Yes, we are getting more money. The subsidies, for example, I will get
to subsidy. You see, so many Nigerians talk about subsidy, but the real problem we have is exchange rates. Even if we say that we are giving subsidy again, an exchange rate, an naira gets the value to 2,000, the price of PMS will still go up. Everything will go up. So on floating the naira, it was not what we should have done. I think it was not correct. It was not a correct decision to take at the time. And I will give you instance. Look at other countries that are producing oil, especially in the Middle East. I tweeted it on my X page, on my Twitter page, and a number of persons debated it, and I provided responses to them. So look at Kuwait, look at Saudi Arabia, look at United Arab Emirates. All these countries provide one subsidy or one form of subsidy or the other. But you see, that is not the great news. It's good news. The great news is that most of these countries take their currency. You see, one of the challenges we have today, if we decide to make policy or IMF provide advisory on policies that will help Nigeria to peg exchange rate to 800, 1,000, at most 1,100 to the dollar. Then you will see that inflation will moderate. You will see that poverty level will reduce. You will see that hunger and deprivation will reduce.
Mr. Alaje, I mean, like Mr. Opi will say, he wants to take Nigeria from consumption to production. If you are going to produce, it doesn't, even when you are farming, you have to wait for harvest. Yes, I mean, producing will be the perfect way for you to make your economy, you know, to be stronger. Now, the question is that the small scale and the medium scale, what is their place in our economy? Which economy in the global world is doing well without those sectors? The question here, Mr.
No, they have
Alaje.
a lot of place. Recently, I need to say this, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry agree with me on this point. And I thought perhaps I was the only voice until Lagos Chamber of Commerce in a retreat mentioned that for them to continue to exist, Naira must be pegged, or government must give a special rate to industry at 1,000. See, no matter how small scale your business is, exchange rate will affect you. It's like air that you breathe. If you don't do something about it, if it remains volatile, it will be tantamount to deliberately weakening the powers of people in the economy. So whether we say eventually we will produce or not, well, to a large extent, that decision has to be made, and one day it will be made.
This is where I'm going with my question now. So if we say we're going to do anything, it may not happen overnight. But the big deal here...
It can happen overnight. No, it can happen overnight.
What can this government do that can happen overnight?
I will tell you.
What can we do to absorb the shocks?
I will tell you, you reveal to us with your colleagues on Channels TV how over 700 barrels of crude is stolen in Nigeria under the last administration. You reveal to us humongous amount of crude that is stolen. See, 700,000 barrels of crude multiplied by $80. Account for it in a year. With about $38 billion we have in our reserve, add that amount to it. It's enough for us to peg our currency at maybe 1,000, maybe 1,200, maybe 1,100.
Okay. So
but
now,
for us to say that we cannot protect the currency, in a way, we are saying that whatever happens in terms of pressure, we will allow our economy to flow through.
Let's break it down for the sake of some of our viewers. A segment of my audience on this program, we love it when we, some of us who are not very fantastic with mathematics and the figures, but very figure shy. But let's break it down for a very simple understanding. When an Obasanjo comes and said, look, this government does not look like he knew what he wanted to do when they came into power. It doesn't do like they understand what they wanted when they came into office. Is it looking like it is so, or is it that things were so bad that they got into office, they met what they could not contain? What exactly do you think is the problem with this government? That now, this economy is becoming too volatile or too difficult for them to handle. Is Obasanjo right that this government was not prepared to deal with the economic problem, or what exactly is giving this government problems?
Well, I tell you that when President Tinubu came to office, he was, I assume, the most prepared individual, because the president told us during campaign that this is what he has spent his entire life. If eventually, luckily, graciously, we now have a president, President Tinubu, if we now say that he's not prepared, then I'm concerned. I think knowing what to do is the real challenge regarding our economies. Why? For most people that are steering the economy of the country, they are all following the same approach that we call the classical approach in economics, hoping that in the sure of when it will be. So when we base policy decision on policy outcome that is assumed or we cannot control, then it's a big challenge. So for my mind, I'm of the opinion that the administration might have prepared so many things, but might not be certain or might not be exact regarding what the economy is doing now, what the economy appears to be. Because classical approach will tell you that demand and supply, when you can manage them, you are going to see results. That is elementary economics. When you study further, you realize that there is so many assumptions in that when you demand, you supply, they have factored out transport, they have factored out energy, they have factored out so many things. That is why those who must be in charge of affairs of the economy must not just be knowledgeable in terms of economic actions or economic things that has to do with the economy. They must understand clearly what are the possible hurdles that they will encounter when they are making such decisions, so that your policy aim will eventually result in the expected policy outcome. Unfortunately, have we seen that? No. Why did I say that? What should we be seeing as an economy now? Look at our GDP, around 3%. We expected, according to the budget presented by the president, that GDP should be 6%. So we are doing 50% of that. What is the exchange rate? Authority expected to moderate down. What we have seen is over 1,600 and is now being sustained. What is inflation? Inflation that is supposed to be between 6 to 9%. Government said maybe 21, 26% is now over 30%. Most economic parameters are going in the wrong direction. So do I say that former President Obasanjo is correct? I would say yes. Do I say that government don't have good intention for Nigeria? I will say no. But having good intention, but knowing what to do and the right time to take that decision is a different ball game entirely. For instance, before subsidy announcement was made, one would have expected that there would have been platform and not to just pay attention only on President Tinubu. 5 billion naira each we heard in the media was shared to the state government, whether the complete money was paid or part money. But what we have heard most of the time is that rice is what is shared. What is price of rice today? Rather than price of rice going down or rice circulating, we continue to see increase in prices because economy cannot be handled from one side. It's an holistic thing, and if we must come out of economic quagmire, we must look at it in such manner such that our economy will be free, and indeed we will say that we are free from the shackles of poverty, hunger, and deprivation.
So now let me ask you. You are the expert here. So I mean, reading and having conversations with people. There are those who are of the school of thought that look, when your currency is battling with a foreign currency that is a major determinant in the direction of your economy, you need to put those kind of currency in your economy in one way or the other to allow the money to flow in the economy and ease the tension on your currency. I don't know whether that policy or that principle is correct. There are those who believe that go to IMF, get some loan, get some dollars into this economy. It will reduce the pressure on the Nigerian naira. Does that make sense to you? Should that be the way to go for the Nigerian economy? Because the way things are shooting in the sky, in the naira against the dollar parity, it's going to be a very bad one towards December. Is that a good principle, a direction that we should look at, Mr. Alhaji?
It's a quick fix principle. This is not the first time. Again, I take you back to the last administration. When President Jonathan left office, what was Nigerian debt profile? About $12 billion. What did President Buhari, how did he leave the office? We were badly indebted, coupled with the fact that we had ways and means that made the situation worse. Let me ask you, and those people watching us all around the world today, if you want to import anything into Nigeria, for instance, from China, on an internet, I don't want to mention the website, if you bought things on your phone, it is so easy to import some things to Nigeria and you pick it maybe in the post office. But let's say we want to export. I give you an instance. We were going to export 2 trailers of rice as first instance to Cameroon. We were told to get paper from this office, from that office, and eventually the time for even inquiring about how easy it would be to export, we could not supply as at the time that it was needed. Now, so here is the issue. We still have a lot of bottlenecks on the real solution. The real solution remains productivity, number one. Number two, exports. And when you look at conversation that we are having in the media space and within the economy, we speak less of productivity. We speak less of, or sometimes even very insignificantly, when we mention exports. It's just the theory part of it. What are the efforts that you and I can say that government over the years have put in place for Nigeria to become a major exporter of whatever products that we want to export? So when we borrowing ends, we want to go back to IMF to borrow because this is how we stimulate the atmosphere. It's as though, so the argument in the short run it will end. But when are we going to stop importing school uniform? We have over 44 million pupils. They wear uniform. 40 million of those uniforms, the 40 out of the 44, what 40 million wear? They are imported fabrics. Yeah, we can give.
So, but Mr. Alhaji, when people say,
to solve those clothes for them, but where are they coming from? We continue to enrich China and so many other countries, saying that Nigeria don't have the capacity. We do, but we have chosen not to produce. We have chosen not to become productive, and we have chosen not to become an export zone.
So when people say that we import a lot and we are import dependent. And I'm asking the question, what is it, why is it so difficult to stop some of this importation? Let us, for 3, 4, 5 years, focus on enriching some of these sectors that you will shut out. And for a moment, let's think about our country. We're thinking too much of globalization in our economy than localization. Because you first of all need to think about your people before you think global. Well, all economies, they operate on a global scale. But then, how far can we go? How long must we go in depending on whatever comes out of this country while killing the local industry? But well, that's my own personal thought. But this is how I want you to anchor, Mr. Alaje. You said that the Buhari government was woeful, terrible with the economy. But is the Tinubu government looking like a senior brother of a badly running economist in terms of the manner in which they run the economy? For you, if you think you were the one who said that the Buhari government set us back 20 years economically, now is Tinubu government doing worse than Buhari government?
Well, in terms of economy, I will tell you that this administration have not been able to do up to what the last administration did. And this is not for me to believe. It is National Bureau of Statistics that said so. Inflation is better under the administration than now. Unemployment is better because our administration, they reviewed the unemployment rate and they gave it to this administration at 4%. Now it's 5.2%. Exchange rate is better under that administration than now. What this administration has not done, that administration did very badly and woefully, was printing of currency. This administration, to my mind, except it's not yet in public domain, have not done that. Another thing this administration have done, which this administration did not do well, is that this administration has tried to improve on our foreign reserve to over 35, I think about $38 billion. But when it comes to infrastructure, apart from FCT, and I must pay attention to Lagos State that has partnered with the federal government on the Red Line project, and I've advised the remaining governors that have access to the same infrastructure, you know, that federal government has on the rail track, go and partner with Ministry of Transport, partner with the Nigerian Railway Corporation. That will bring immediate ease to your people. That is why I give so much respect to the governor of Lagos State and his team, and especially Lamata, for bringing that project to Lagos. So there are few things they've done, but in some areas, economic indicators shows that it is worse than the former administration. Meanwhile, there are some areas they have done and they have improved on. But the things that seems to be the big elephant on the neck.
Oh dear. Seems that the network is just frustrating our conversation. Dr. Paul Alaje, an economist and chief economist at SPM Professionals, thank you so much indeed. Some of what has become a people and a poor people or average person-oriented policy, the credit score, the student loan. I hope that we'll see more of this so that the average person's life can be better. But the way things are going in the country, the poor is really suffering and they are feeling the heat. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje. You were almost saying something about the elephant in the room before the connection cut you off.
The elephant in the room is exchange rate. All the gains this administration have made, exchange rate, that is, if Naira increases from 1,600 to 2,000, it will wipe off everything. All the gains. That is why we need to be extremely careful and not to listen to the sweetness, the soundness of what some institutions are telling us. If we do that, remember, I think last week or this week, you spoke with the MD of Transition Company of Nigeria. And you asked him, I watched your show with him. You asked him a sincere question. Why is the price increasing? The first response he gave to you is that, have you seen exchange rates? He said that unconsciously. Exchange rate, if it continues like this, it may eventually wipe away all the gains the administration have made. Already, we have a significant improvement in our FAC, which is going to federal, state, and local government. And my final advice is that, as governors, invest this money on your people. Put it back in the economy. Don't convert money to any currency. I'm not challenging anybody. I'm not saying anybody is doing it. But the allegation, especially what the central bank governor said, that seems to be a correlation. All right. Let's put it in infrastructure for local government, those that are receiving, put it in the life of your people. Let's see improvement, and let's be sincere by loving our people and improving the quality of life of Nigerians.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje. For those who are in government, maybe you are you've been carried away by this different convoy, and you are not able to see the sufferings of the people. If you are in the villa, if you are in the parliament, or if you are in the judiciary, people need to understand that a lot of Nigerians are suffering. The bottom line is that the average person is finding it difficult to feed. And when that is happening, there is danger in the land. That needs to be fixed. Thank you so much for the insight tonight, Dr. Paul Alaje. I appreciate it. We take a break, everyone. So much confusion in Kano State. I will be bringing you into the picture of what is going on as far as the politics of Kano State is concerned. That will be after this break, everyone. Let us Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. So much confusion in Kano State. Few hours before the local government elections. Well, Governor Abba Yusuf says that the local government elections in the state will hold despite a court ruling prohibiting the process. Well, this is the background. On the 22nd of October, a federal high court in Kano restrained Mr. Sani Malmufashi, the chair of the Kano State Independent Electoral Commission, CANSEC, from conducting the October 26 LG polls, which is tomorrow. Now, in that ruling, the presiding judge said Malmufashi is unqualified to conduct the elections. This is the reason. Because he is a card-carrying member of the New Nigeria's People's Party, NNPP. And that 22nd, the Federal High Court in Kano restrained Mr. Malmufashi from conducting that election, which is supposed to hold tomorrow. Well, in all of this, the State High Court in Kano ordered the Kano State Independent Electoral Commission (CANSEC) to proceed with the conduct of local government polls slated for Saturday, tomorrow. Sunusi Adomaji, the presiding judge, ruled that the Constitution empowers CANSEC to conduct and supervise elections in the LGAs of Kano State. The judgment was delivered earlier today following an ex parte application filed by the commission. The Kano State Police Command says that it would comply with the court order restricting it from participating in the upcoming local government election, which is scheduled for tomorrow. That this was a statement released by the public relations officer of the Nigerian Police Force in Kano, Abdullahi Aruna. Take a listen to him.
You are very much aware of the court order received by the police command here in Kano. Item 9 of the order provided that the police should not participate in the coming local government election in the state. The police in Kano are not participating in the election. But however, it is our responsibility to ensure no breakdown of law and order in the state, and we are always alive to our responsibilities. The State Commissioner of Police, CP Salman Dogo Garba, has already directed all the command's operational commanders to ensure protection of life and property in Kano State.
That is Mr. Aruna, the PPRO of the police in Kano State. Well, so the police says it will. What about the order of today from the High Court? The Federal High Court in Kano said, look, Malmufashi cannot conduct the election because it's partisan. He's a card-carrying member of the NNPP. The order of court today says, go ahead. The Constitution permits you to be able to do so. That is CANSEC going to the court to say, allow us to conduct these exercises tomorrow. It's looking like a situation in one state that you know in the south, isn't it? But let's get some perspectives on this one. We've heard that the governor has said that the exercise will continue tomorrow. The APC chairman in the state has said, look, if it continues, it's a call for anarchy. Mr. Mohammed Jamu is a special advisor to the Kano government on international and political affairs, public affairs. Is live for us in our Kano studio. It's good to see you, Mr. Jamu. Thanks so much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Shaun, and good evening, Nigerians.
What is happening in our dear state of Kano? Tomorrow, is supposed to be the election. And one is wondering which one supersedes. The court order which says Mr. Malmufashi is partisan because he's a member of the NNPP, or the one that says, look, go ahead, a lower court, which is the high court. Well, you will say those courts are court of coordinate jurisdiction. Well, then, where do you go from today going into tomorrow?
Well, thank you so much, Sherwin. This is one very beautiful thing about Nigeria. The democracy in Nigeria is in murky waters and it's being tested. On the 25th of September 2024, the CANSEC in Kano approached the State High Court with a very clear demand that they want the State High Court to interfere by stopping all the political parties from doing any action that will stop CANSEC from performing its constitutional role. And on the 25th of September, the judge, in his own wisdom, delivered an order granting an interlocutory injunction pending the determination of the suit and granted all the reliefs as sought out by CANSEC. So after that action has been given, some members of another political party decided to do otherwise by not adhering to the ruling of the court. And they approached the Federal High Court, demanding the Federal High Court to take some actions against CANSEC. And judgment was delivered on Tuesday. Fortunately, the judge in Kano, who directed and granted the interlocutory injunction, decided to deliver his judgment today, which in his judgment, he has already decided that CANSEC, as constituted, should go ahead and perform its statutory role of conducting the local government elections in Kano State. So this is the situation that we have faced in Kano State. The CANSEC initially has already gone to court to get some reliefs, and they got their reliefs, while at the same time, the Federal High Court was equally granting reliefs to members of another political party, despite the order from the State High Court denying them the right, or rather stopping them from doing anything that will interfere in the responsibilities and duties of the CANSEC. This is where it stands as it is today.
It's quite interesting because this looks like deja vu, isn't it? Because a few weeks ago, we saw this happen in Rivers State. And why the court is now being dragged into the murky political waters. And how this will pan out in the end, because if it goes back and forth, you drag the integrity of the judges into all of this matter. You drag the court into all of this matter. The politicians will walk away. They will leave the Nigerian people in so much of a dilemma. And at the end of the day, they leave the system messed up. The question is, will the election hold tomorrow? There is an order of court saying this man is a card-carrying member. Has that been settled? Has that been resolved? Could the government have removed that man and say, okay, since he's an obstacle, how can we move forward? Can we have another person who is deemed to be non-partisan to carry out that exercise?
Okay, Sherwin, it has been settled in a plethora of cases by several judgments that were calibrated at different courts, either at the High Courts, at the Court of Appeal, or at the Supreme Court, whereby decisions were taken in such a way that grants the... Okay, let's start. Come again with your question again, please.
So my question is that the court, there's a substitute order of court to say this man is a card-carrying member of the NNPP. NNPP is the ruling party in the state. Is it possible the government appointed the NNP, the man in any state? Could he have stepped down so that another person would have carried out that duty?
Thank you. Well, when I said these cases have been calibrated at different courts, when somebody is being accused or suspected to be a member of a political party, how do you prove that that person is a member of a political party? Was the voters register or the register of the party displayed at the court? Were any evidence provided during the hearing of this case? I have been following and monitoring how this court case up to the point where judgment was given. And I can boldly tell you, Mr. Shewun and Nigerians, that the register of NNPP was never displayed in open court. Neither was his voter's card or membership of the NNPP displayed in court. So I think that judgment was a judgment that can be cited as more like a hearsay judgment, which I am sure the CANSEC has already, as a responsible body that respect the sanctity of the judiciary, they have already appealed that judgment at the Court of Appeal. The processes of the appeal has already been instituted. But I am telling you it is a faulty judgment, and that judgment will be set aside by the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court.
Now, so in all of this, I'm just saying that just to save time, energy, and what a view of the people of Kano State, is it difficult to say, stand aside, if this man is the encumbrance in this process, if this is the cause of the dispute, is it too difficult to say, step aside, let this other person conduct the exercise? That is just perhaps a street wisdom, which I thought that could also be applied, because one APC is saying it's a call for anarchy if Malmofashi goes ahead to conduct that election, because the governor said, no retreat, no surrender. The election must hold tomorrow.
Malumfashi stepping down is accepting that Malumfashi is a card-carrying member of NNPP. And I'm sure by the action taken by the Kano state government in this regard, that means the state government has not seen enough evidence that will show or prove that Malumfashi is a card-carrying member of the NNPP. And if anybody thought otherwise on this particular regard, then you can go to the court and prove it. Yes, a judgment was delivered against him at the court, but I am still telling you that this gentleman, there was no NNPP register that was displayed before the open court, or nobody was able to provide any proof beyond reasonable doubt that Malumfashi is a member of the NNPP. And once you ask him to step aside, then you have admitted being guilty of all actions, and you have no reason but to abide, but not to appeal, but to abide by all the directives as given by the judge.
Mr. Jamu, isn't government responsible to a larger percentage of the people? And isn't public policy actually for the interest of the larger majority? What is the interest of one man when the majority of interest of the majority of the people are involved? The question is, are you hearing what the opposition is saying? Opposition is saying that you, your friends and your colleagues in the NNPP and in government, you have strategized and you planned out how you are going to rig the election tomorrow using Malumfashi. How possible is it for you to just think about sacrificing Malumfashi for a moment, for one day, and allow the process for sake of transparency? Is that possible, Mr. Jamu? Because I'm just wondering, isn't this supposed to be for the interest of the Kano people anyways?
Yeah, that is absolutely possible, and no one has doubt that if anybody is supposed to be an encumbrance to anything that will further the lives and the living standard of the people, setting him aside is not anything but the best way to go about it. But in this particular matter, we are dealing with issues that mischief are just being introduced into the system so as to make it very difficult for Kano state government to be able to have a peaceful conduct of the local government elections as directed by the Supreme Court, granting the autonomy of the local government. This is where we are today. If this matter was a matter that the government has enough evidence that this person is a card-carrying member of the party, the government has no reason but to ease him out and let him go and appoint somebody who can be independent. We have several people in Kano. Kano is a state of more than 20 million people, and in this 20 million people, we have thousands of people that are equally competent enough to be able to lead the CANSEC and conduct peaceful election. But this time around, it is the mischief. And as government cannot just fold its arms when the government sees a script being played against it. That is not even the target. The whole target is about the conduct of the election, and some people are hell-bent that no elections should be held in Kano. And already they have their script. Once we scale this, the next thing is they are going to court to get another order to stop the federal government from giving the local government funds, to stash them of funds to operate. So it is a script which we know, and everybody knows. It's nothing new.
Now, are you worried that the police says that they will follow the court order? They will obey the court order, the federal court, high court order?
Yeah, I have to be worried, but I am watching closely and keenly to see, because the state high court, which is the court of competent jurisdiction when it comes to issue of local government election at the state level, has already issued another order directing the police to be part of the processes of the election. And then, be that as it may, Mr. Sherwin, let us look at it from a critical point. Does the police need a court order to direct it from performing its own constitutional right? The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has already laid out the functions of the police. And if you even go down in the Police Act, I can't be able to quote it directly here, but even in the Police Act, it is well spelled out. These are the functions and the responsibilities of the police. Should any court come out now and tell the police, don't do your function? I don't know if there is any court that can determine policy matters. The only court that can determine policy matters or interpret what the Constitution is all about is the Supreme Court. And in this case, it is not the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court comes out and say, police don't perform your constitutional role, then we can assume a new law has been introduced, which needs ratification by the National Assembly. But I don't think the High Court, they have the power within them to be able to direct the police against performing their constitutional role. And with this regard, I will advise the police to look at the Constitution and work rather with the Constitution, rather than going about with what is going against and contrary to the Constitution. Only the Supreme Court can be able to say something that goes contrary to the Constitution and can be complied, definitely. Yeah. Because if you don't even comply with it, what the Supreme Court does is either you accept it or you wait till you go to heaven and challenge it in heaven. So the Supreme Court is not talking here. It is the first court of instance. And I don't think the first court of instance can direct the police from performing their constitutional right. So we have appealed against that judgment, and another court has directed them to go ahead and comply and do the needful and do their constitutional function as required by law. So,
Mr. Jamu, I don't know, when you have this kind of confusion, I don't know whether the principle of equity will be relevant, because that principle says that where there are two equal equities, the first in time prevails. So if that principle is applicable here and can be substantiated in both positions of the court, that means the Federal High Court position will have to prevail in this sense, if that principle has to be applied. If that principle is to be applied, what do you say?
There was already an interlocutory injunction from the State High Court before the judgment of the State High Court, stopping anybody from interfering in all the processes that will stop a peaceful conduct of local government election. So the first instance is that order as granted by the judge in Kano State High Court. So that is the first. So if we are going with the first, then what comes from the State High Court, truth by the introductory injunction, is what came first before the judgment of the Federal High Court.
All right, thank you so much indeed for your time tonight. Mr. Mohammed Jamu, who is the special advisor to the Kano government on international relations and public affairs. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Shehun. It's wonderful having you.
Mr. Dalahatu Shehu, who is a member of the APC, was expected to join us in this conversation. Unfortunately, we understand that he couldn't make it to the studio up until now, just to have a balanced conversation on this matter. But thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this conversation tonight. And as our show for today, many thanks, everyone. I'm Sean Kimale. God bless Nigeria.